That night, David tossed and turned in his bed, haunted by unsettling dreams. In one, he stood at the edge of a dark forest, the wind howling around him. Ahead, he could see Maria, her back to him, walking deeper into the woods. He called out to her, but no sound escaped his lips. No matter how hard he tried to run, he couldn't catch up. His feet felt heavy, like they were sinking into the earth. Suddenly, from the shadows, Madam Josephine appeared, her face twisted in a cold, predatory smile. She reached out a hand toward him, her long fingers beckoning him closer. "David," she whispered, her voice soft and seductive. "You belong to me now." David woke up with a start, his heart racing. The room was dark and silent, but the weight of the dream lingered. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and sat up, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to him. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the growing sense that Madam Josephine's influence was creeping into every part of his life, even his dreams. The next morning, David couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his chest. He had always been a practical man, not one to believe in superstitions or magic. But the rumors of witchcraft, combined with the vividness of his dreams, left him feeling unsettled. Was there some truth to what the villagers were saying? Could Madam Josephine really have cast some sort of spell on him? He needed to talk to someone. He couldn't keep this to himself any longer. So he went to the one person he knew he could trust, Maria. Maria listened intently as David recounted his dream and the strange, unsettling feelings that had plagued him since his last encounter with Madam Josephine. As he spoke, her face grew pale and her grip on his hand tightened. "We need to get help, David," she said firmly. "This is more than just gossip now. If you're having these dreams, it might mean she's doing something to you, something dark." David frowned, still reluctant to believe that Madam Josephine could actually be using magic. "I don't know, Maria. It just feels like a nightmare. I'm not sure if it means anything." Maria shook her head, her eyes full of concern. "In this village, people don't dream like that for no reason. My grandmother used to tell me stories about people who could enter your dreams, manipulate your thoughts. We can't take this lightly." David wanted to argue, to tell her that it was all just coincidence. But deep down, he knew she was right. The dream had felt too real, too vivid to be brushed off as just his imagination. "We'll go see the village priestess," Maria suggested. "She'll know what to do. She's dealt with things like this before." David hesitated. The village priestess was known for her wisdom and her connection to the spiritual world, but going to her felt like admitting that he believed in the rumors. Still, he couldn't deny that something was wrong, and if there was even a chance that Madam Josephine was using some kind of dark power, he needed to know. "All right," he agreed. "We'll go see her." The village priestess lived in a small, thatched hut on the outskirts of the village. She was an elderly woman, known for her deep knowledge of the spiritual world and her ability to see things others could not. David and Maria arrived at her home just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the narrow path that led to her door. The priestess greeted them with a knowing look, as if she had been expecting their visit. "Come in," she said, her voice raspy but warm. "I have been waiting for you." David and Maria exchanged uneasy glances, but followed her inside. The air in the hut was thick with the smell of herbs and incense, and strange symbols were painted on the walls. "You are troubled," the priestess said, sitting down on a mat and gesturing for them to do the same. "Speak, and I will listen." David explained everything: the strange offer from Madam Josephine, the rumors of witchcraft, the dream that had shaken him to his core. The priestess listened in silence, her eyes closed as if she were absorbing every word. When he finished, she opened her eyes and looked directly at him. "You are not wrong to be afraid," she said slowly. "Madam Josephine is a woman who desires power above all else. She has tried to use her wealth to control those around her, but now she has turned to something darker. She believes that through magic she can bend your will to hers. David felt a chill run down his spine. So it's true? She's using magic on me? The priestess nodded. Not yet, but she will, and once she does, it will be difficult to break free. Maria's grip on David's hand tightened. What can we do? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The priestess stood and went to a small shelf, pulling down a pouch of herbs. There is a way to protect yourself, she said, handing the pouch to David. Burn these in your home each night. They will keep her magic at bay. But be warned. This will only work for a time. Madam Josephine is determined. She will not stop until she gets what she wants. David took the pouch, feeling the weight of the priestess's words settle heavily on his shoulders. Thank you, he said quietly. The priestess gave him a sad smile. Be strong, young man. The battle is just beginning. The next few days were tense. Every time David lit the herbs the priestess had given him, he felt a fleeting sense of security. The pungent smell filled the small house he shared with his family, keeping the shadows at bay, but his mind was restless. Every night he replayed his confrontation with Madam Josephine, her haunting words echoing in his ears. You'll regret this. Maria stayed close, her presence a source of comfort. But even she couldn't fully erase the fear gnawing at him. The village gossip had only intensified. People whispered not just about Madam Josephine, but also about David, casting him as the victim of her witchcraft. Mothers warned their sons to stay away from her mansion. Some of the older women even stopped greeting him when they crossed paths, as though fearing they'd be pulled into the spell themselves. David could feel the weight of the village's eyes on him whenever he walked through the streets. He had grown up here, known these people his entire life, yet now they treated him like a stranger, worse, like someone cursed. He couldn't tell which was harder to bear, the judgment of his neighbors or the constant pressure of Madam Josephine's pursuit. His mother, Agnes, grew more anxious as the days passed. One evening, she cornered him in the kitchen while Maria was outside fetching water. David, she said in a low voice, we cannot keep living like this. This woman is too powerful. She's controlling the entire village. Everyone is afraid. David frowned, chopping vegetables for their evening meal. Mama, we've already been to the priestess. I'm doing everything I can. Agnes shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. It's not enough. You don't understand, David. This is beyond us now. If Madam Josephine doesn't stop, this will destroy our family. David placed the knife down, his own frustration bubbling to the surface. What do you want me to do? Run away? Leave the village? His mother's eyes widened, and for a moment he thought she might say yes. But instead, she grabbed his hand, her voice trembling. No, David, I want you to fight. I want you to find a way to stop her before she takes everything from us. David didn't respond, his mind racing. How was he supposed to fight someone like Madam Josephine? She was rich, powerful, and ruthless. But as he looked into his mother's pleading eyes, he knew he had no choice. He had to find a way to end this before it was too late. Just when David thought things couldn't get worse, Madam Josephine found a new way to force herself into his life. One morning, as he was preparing to head to the market, his father's old car sputtering as it idled in the yard, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of their house. David's heart sank when he saw the familiar vehicle. Madam Josephine stepped out, dressed in her usual expensive clothes, her head held high like a queen surveying her kingdom. She didn't look at anyone else, only at David. She was all smiles, but her eyes were hard, glinting with a determination that unnerved him. David, she called, her voice as smooth as ever. I hope I'm not disturbing you. David tensed, knowing exactly why she had come. What do you want, Madam Josephine? He asked, his voice steady but cold. She took a few steps closer, her heels clicking against the dusty ground. I've been thinking about our last conversation, she said. I realized I may have been too hasty, so I'm here to make a new offer. David's jaw clenched. He had made it clear that he wasn't interested, but here she was again, relentless as ever. There's nothing to talk about. My answer hasn't changed. Madam Josephine smiled, as though she hadn't heard him. I'm willing to double my offer. Whatever you want, David, it's yours. I'll give you half of my estate. Imagine what that could do for your family. Your mother wouldn't have to work another day in her life. You could give Maria the wedding of her dreams. All you have to do is say yes. David's anger flared. This isn't about money. You can't just buy people's lives, Madam Josephine. I'm not for sale. For a moment, her smile faltered, replaced by a flash of frustration. Don't be foolish, David, she said, her tone sharpening. This is an opportunity. I'm offering you the world. All I ask is that you spend time with me. Get to know me. I'm not asking for a commitment, just a chance. David took a step back, shaking his head. I've told you before, I love Maria. Nothing you say or offer will change that. Madam Josephine's eyes darkened, her expression hardening. You'll regret this, she whispered, her voice low and dangerous. You think you're making the right choice, but I promise you, David, you have no idea what you're turning down. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked back to her SUV. The door slammed shut behind her, and the car sped off, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. David stood frozen for a moment, the weight of her threat sinking in. This wasn't over. Madam Josephine wasn't the kind of woman to accept defeat. If anything, her latest offer only proved how far she was willing to go, and deep down, David feared what she might do next. Maria had been trying her best to stay calm, but it was getting harder. Every day, the tension in the village seemed to grow, and the rumors about Madam Josephine's obsession with David refused to die down. The looks she received from the other women in the market had become unbearable. Some pitied her. Others seemed to resent her, as if she had somehow brought this upon herself. But it wasn't just the gossip that was wearing her down. It was the growing sense that something darker was at play. Madam Josephine's wealth and influence had already given her power over the village, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling that she was using something far more dangerous to get what she wanted. Late one night, as David lay beside her, fast asleep, Maria stared at the ceiling, unable to rest. She couldn't stop thinking about the priestess's warning. Madam Josephine hadn't used magic yet, but she would. The thought chilled Maria to the core. She gently shook David awake. "David, we need to talk," she whispered. David groaned, rubbing his eyes. "What is it?" Maria sat up, her voice trembling. "I can't shake this feeling. Something is going to happen. Madam Josephine is going to do something terrible. We need to find a way to stop her." David sighed, sitting up beside her. "Maria, we've been to the priestess. We're doing everything we can." "I know," Maria said, her voice cracking. "But it's not enough. She won't stop until she has you, David. She's already made that clear." David reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll get through this," he promised. "I won't let her come between us." But as Maria looked into his eyes, she couldn't help but wonder if they were already too late. Madam Josephine had crossed lines no one in the village dared to cross. She was willing to use any means necessary to get what she wanted. And the worst part? Maria didn't know how to fight against someone who had nothing to lose. Watch out for Part 4 and uncover the next chilling chapter. In this suspenseful and intriguing chapter, David can feel the darkness closing in as the line between dreams and reality blurs. Madam Josephine will stop at nothing to bind him to her forever. Will David escape her twisted obsession, or will he be trapped in her web of darkness? The stakes have never been higher. Brace yourself for more drama, suspense, and unexpected twists. You won't want to miss what unfolds in Part 4 of this thrilling tale. Like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be the first to know when Part 4 is out.
Follow this page or subscribe to this channel for more stories.